This week on The Impact, from predatory loans.
Washington consumers are owing money to people who are not regulated under the state of Washington's laws. To me, that is a problem.
To strip club working conditions.
I think what we've done is kind of pretend or ignore that industry, and that's at our peril.
Gift cards, concerts, and campers.
So consumers don't get caught between a rock and a hard place when something goes sideways.
Leaders from both parties weigh in on consumer protection topics in 2024.
We don't want to over-regulate to where we're stifling our businesses, we're stifling our job creation.
That's this week on The Impact. Hello and welcome to The Impact. I'm Mike McClanahan. With so many interesting bills to talk about this week, we're taking a different approach and looking at the work of one committee as a whole. If you've ever had issues trying to use a gift card.
When we find out that we've got a gift card in our back pocket somewhere, we expect to get that value back.
Problems buying tickets to a concert.
Abusive practices in resellers and scalpers, and the insidious use of bots to deny our patrons access to tickets on the primary market.
Or trouble with the purchase of a travel trailer. Anything that made you say, there ought to be a law.
Good morning. Calling to order this meeting of the Consumer Protection and Business Committee of Friday.
Odds are that law would come through the House Consumer Protection and Business Committee or its Senate counterpart. Joining me now, Chair of the House Consumer Protection and Business Committee, Democratic Representative Amy Walen, and the Ranking Republican Member, Representative Eric Robertson. Thank you both for your time today. First, I want to talk about gift cards. The gift card legislation this year was quite interesting. The testimony on it, there were strong feelings about it from both opponents and supporters. Representative Walen, what's your perspective on both of those bills?
Yeah, I think the bills were introduced without enough stakeholdering with the business community and those affected. So we heard concerns from retailers, we heard concerns from all types of businesses really about, number one, should uncashed gift cards revert to the state? And number two, what sort of combinations of using gift cards with cash and other forms of payment should be allowed? What kind of expenses would that involve for the businesses? And also sort of the cash out of gift cards, which is an opportunity for theft and money laundering. And so, we really worked together on the Consumer Protection and Business Committee in a bipartisan way, and I think we all shared concerns about some of the proposals that were brought forward.
What's your perspective on those bills?
Well, one of the key issues were the fact that you could cash out up to $50 on the underlying bill. And so as a small business owner, if you walk in and you receive one of those gift cards and someone spends $5, you're cleaning your till out to try and cash out the remaining part of that card. And so there was, like the representative said, there wasn't a whole lot of work done with the community, so we heard lots of concerns, lots of unanswered questions, and when you're in a 60-day session, you don't have time to dive into those and get the right answers, because in these bills, words really matter.
Without going too far down the rabbit hole on this one issue, were there any particular aspects of the legislation that maybe could have legs in a longer session or tweaked, modified versions of it?
I think the one that talks about unused gift cards being reported to the unclaimed property system is a worthwhile conversation. I think a lot of work needs to be done. And I have some particular, I prepare the unclaimed property tax return for our business, so I have some other work I'd like to see done on the unclaimed property system. It's a great system, but it needs work, and it would definitely need work to absorb a gift card program like as was proposed.
It was definitely, would have been some big changes there. Anything else on gift cards that you think is notable to add?
Well, no, I think the short time frame and the need for more work were the keys to its stalling during the session.
So you're both sponsors of, or you're both on the bill, at least, House Bill 1874, which is described as a way to combat predatory lending. Could you give me a little bit more information about what types of lenders we're talking about, and also just what you heard from constituents and stakeholders during the process?
Yeah, I mean, we met with the Department of Financial Institutions early last year and talked about new kinds of loan products that have entered the marketplace, mostly app-based, and some of these are arranged by out-of-state banks. So a couple of concerns. Number one, Washington consumers are owing money and to people who are not regulated under the state of Washington's laws. To me, that is a problem. And number two, sort of a lack of transparency around who's arranging the loan, who is financing the loan, and then who do our consumers actually get to complain to. They couldn't complain to DFI, our Department of Financial Institutions, because our definition of loan needed to be fixed. So that's what the bill seeks to do.
Back in 2015, I think there was a lot of discussion about sort of what might be payday lenders, that sort of thing, the legislation here. From your perspective, is Washington's law sufficient on that, or could we fill in some blanks?
Well, there's always work to be done. As technology evolves and business strategies evolve, there's always something new that kind of pops up. But in the lenders that are out of state, that are online or app-based, those in particular, there's about 20 of them that practice and offer those products in the state of Washington. And there might be a bad apple in that basket of lenders, and we need to get to that. But we also don't need to throw out the entire basket in an effort to get to the one soiled one.
And let's transition here. A lot of stuff we might be able to cover. Representative Walen, what's the goal of a bill you sponsored, House Bill 2036, relating to sort of workplace standards and safety for adult entertainers?
Yeah, there was a study about this particular industry, which I will note, there's I think only 5 or 6 establishments that this big conversation is taking place over. But dancers or performers in adult entertainment establishments or strip clubs, as they're known, we just don't have labor protections for the workers there. And so, I mean, the ideal is that we create a sustainable business model, from my perspective, for these businesses going forward, that we make sure that the workers are protected, that there is security. We need to, I think what we've done is kind of pretend or ignore that industry, and that's at our peril. We need to pay attention. These are legal and licensed businesses in the state of Washington. Their workers deserve protection as well. But there's also a business side of that, to be able to afford all the security and surveillance that is required to keep the dancers safe. We need to have a sustainable business model. And that's what the dancers have asked us to do. And typically we listen to the workers involved, and that's that's where we get our policy ideas from. So that's where this bill came from.
And so one thing in the testimony that kept coming up was that a lot of the entertainers pay floor fees, or they pay for the privilege of working there for tips. And that the clubs, because alcohol is prohibited, alcohol sales, don't have the same sort of cash stream that a lot of other states, similarly situated establishments in other states might have. But then the alcohol issue has been contentious as well. What's your perspective on that? Yeah,
well, my perspective is different maybe than some members. This is a very controversial topic for whatever reason. We have a complicated system where the Liquor and Cannabis Board and L&I regulate these types of businesses as well. Our local cities and counties want to be involved. My perspective is, if your only revenue is coming from your dancers or performers, then that's probably a flawed business model. And we should allow more of what I consider to be, I think, a bit healthier business environment and atmosphere when you do have alcohol and food service and it's more of a social event. We saw LCB conduct raids on some of the gay clubs a couple of weeks ago, and I think that sort of highlights and brings attention to what are adult entertainment establishments, what is their role, what should be regulated, what should L&I be doing, what should the LCB be doing. It's a complicated knot to unravel, but we have some work to do there.
What's your perspective on those issues?
Well, I heard that when I was on the Labor Committee, and also I'm the assistant ranking on the Regulated Substance and Gaming committee where we regulate alcohol service. And so it was, first and foremost, I shared the concern of we need to keep the performers safe in a safe environment. And that's incumbent on not only the business owners, but the policies that we authorize and put in place. And then, of course, adding alcohol service into that environment is another, not necessarily a complication, but it's another added issue that you need to be able to regulate. And we do have strong regulation in the state of Washington on alcohol service. So marrying, balancing up the safety of the performers, the safety of the environment in the business, as well as having the services is a little bit of a challenge. And we saw the business owners as well as the performers come in together asking for changes, and then it kind of unraveled a little bit. So we need to bring everybody around the table and try and find a common ground that everybody can live with.
So you sponsored legislation, House Bill 1996, relating to non-motorized recreational vehicles. First of all, could you just sort of clarify, what are we talking about here? Is this travel trailers or?
Yes, this is the towable recreational vehicles, your fifth wheels, your tow trailers and such. And right now, there isn't a relationship in state law between the manufacturers, who are mostly out of state, and the dealers, who are, of course, in-state businesses. And so this would establish in statute the relationship for out-of-state dealers and out-of-state manufacturers and in-state dealers, and protect things like warranties. So it is a consumer protection issue, making sure that the state is facilitating those relationships so consumers don't get caught between a rock and a hard space when something goes sideways.
What's your perspective on that legislation?
Oh, I think, if the marketplace is regulated, we're in a better place. So it was bipartisan. It's a good regulatory framework. It makes this industry more accessible to more kinds of people.
There's also legislation that you're both sponsors on, which would incentivize moving commercial office space and converting it into residential space to, I guess, increase the housing supply is the goal. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I think the nature of work has really changed. And we've seen that since the pandemic. People are working remotely. We're seeing office space vacancy. This is the quickest way that we can house families. We have a housing crisis, and using existing buildings to house families is something that should be a priority. Last year, we removed some regulatory roadblocks to that happening, and this year, talking about creating a tax incentive, because it is complicated to change a commercial building into residential, and I think a little bit of state assistance is in order.
So it's maybe not as simple as it sounds to do that, more expensive than you would think?
I think so. I think especially with the tall towers, but I would say that in everybody's community around our state, we are seeing empty strip malls, empty office buildings of all sizes, not just tall towers that we tend to think of. So this incentive would be designed to help people in all communities quickly convert commercial buildings into residential.
Do you see this as an untapped resource?
Oh, absolutely. And our housing committee has done some really great work in thinking outside of the box, the traditional boxes that we've all kind of worked in over the years, looking for opportunities to increase the housing in the communities, and I think this was one of them. But we need to also stop over-regulating, as the representative said. We just passed a bill today that's in a mandate that we have energy assessments mandatory on all residential sales, which I think is just going to be counterproductive to a lot of the initiatives that we've put forward. We need to. Those things are available. I know I did it when I just purchased a house a year and a half ago. I had asked for those records and let them evaluate them. But having yet another state mandate just adds to the costs of, especially for first-time home buyers. The costs mount up every little thing that we had. And so making it easier to take some of these commercial buildings and turn them into residential is important, but we also need to stop adding other things.
Do you have anything to add on that as far as the tension between sort of regulating and facilitating growth?
Yeah, I think if we really accept that we have a housing emergency, that means that we should treat it as such. Our landfills are full of construction material. It takes, 5 to 10 years to bring a new building online. We urgently need housing now, and we should act appropriately and accordingly.
So I want to kind of step outside of the specific bills and just for a second here, look at more about your backgrounds and sort of the lens that you bring to these discussions and how that informs both your perspective and your votes on the committee. What's your perspective on consumer business and consumer protection in business from your personal background?
Yeah, my personal background is that I grew up in another country. I was a lawyer. When I came to the United States, I couldn't practice law. I'm married to a car dealer. I became an auto dealership bookkeeper because I wasn't able to work in my chosen field being an attorney when I first came back to the United States. I became a cashier at a car dealership. And so that's kind of where I come from. Is I run a business with my husband and our team. It's a team of humans that make mistakes every day. And I believe in giving businesses the benefit of the doubt and being careful regulators and protectors of consumers, but also, having a balance to keep our economy going.
And Representative Robertson.
So I come from a public safety background, so I did career in law enforcement as well as fire administration. So we see regulations all across all the fields in Washington. So I guess my interest in it is making sure that people are protected, but then also counterbalancing with we don't want to over-regulate to where we're stifling our businesses, we're stifling our job creation and creating a burden to where good family wage jobs are either lost or are disincentivized.
So I'm going to jump outside of this committee for just a second. I want to ask about a bill that you sponsored that went to a different committee, but definitely raised some interest at the beginning of the session here. This bill would reduce emissions from small off-road engines. Can you talk to me about kind of what the intent behind that is and sort of what it would apply to?
Yeah, the intent behind the bill was to back a movement in my community called Quiet and Clean Kirkland, who are interested in reducing or eliminating or phasing out the use of mostly gas-powered leaf blowers. I mean, not just gas-powered leaf blowers, but lawn equipment in general. So if you think about my district, a lot of people are working from home, and they have a deep concern about the environment, about the health of the workers who are using this type of equipment. So the bill was designed to go to sort of shadow California's phase out of gas-powered leaf blowers.
And what's your perspective on it? I didn't know if this was my segue here.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I appreciate her passion and her excellent job that she does representing her community, but from a statewide perspective, what's good in Bellevue is not necessarily good in Benton City, Buckley, or Blaine. So I would suggest that would probably be a great local ordinance, but right now at this juncture of where we're at in the state of Washington, I think that would create a real burden on a lot of our businesses that are providing lawn service and such, where it may not be necessary to be quiet out in the farmlands and such. So, I have a more rural district, so I would, it'd be something that I don't know that I would support on behalf of the people I represent.
I think we should go back to raking leaves. Yeah. I think we should. I think it's good. Yeah.
So, okay, well, back to the committee then here with sort of running low on time here, but we probably have enough to discuss some of the bills that I didn't bring up, maybe or bills that we've already talked about. But Representative Walen, what do you think will have the largest impact on the day-to-day life for a lot of people who may be watching this interview now, in terms of legislation that's come into the committee, whether it passed or not? What do you think has the most potential impact?
I think what we do is solve problems in our committee. So we have seen folks being taken advantage of by solar installers. So I think that's a bill. We have a comprehensive bill to protect consumers from being scammed by solar providers. That's a huge one. We have a bill that you may have had some experience with about ticket sales, about how
yes,
the Taylor Swift bill. That's right, the T-Swift bill. how should we allow ticket sellers to market in our communities? How much markup is okay? Should game tickets only be a license rather than an actual ticket that you can buy or sell yourself? These are important questions that I think we've taken on the issue of what is a loan, and just sort of going out into community and listening to people and trying to solve problems is what we do, and I think those are important consumer protections, and there's more to be done.
And Representative Robertson, close us out.
Yeah, I would concur. I think the bipartisan collaboration that Amy fosters in the community committee is important, and we all have a voice there. And I think having all those voices creates better legislation, and it protects consumers, but also allows for the legitimate businesses, that, say in the solar industry, to provide a service to the people in our communities, and so I appreciate that.
Well, we're out of time, but I'm sure we could go longer if we had more time. So thank you both, Representative Robertson, Representative Walen. We appreciate your time and perspectives. Up next, a look at some of the bills which survived the first two legislative deadlines. Stay with us. Well, we recently saw the fiscal committee cutoff, which is the second major deadline of the legislative session, meaning that bills in certain committees which still have not advanced out of those committees are presumed dead for the year. Now, some of the bills that survived the first two deadlines include House Bill 2037 to encourage teaching about the Holocaust and genocide in K-12 schools, Senate Bill 5592 to require automated external defibrillators in gyms and fitness centers. That passed the Senate for the second year in a row. House Bill 2114 to cap rent increases made it past the second cutoff deadline. Senate Bill 6105 to create safer working conditions in strip clubs and other adult entertainment establishments. It's the companion bill to the House version Representative Walen sponsored. House Bill 1579 to establish an Office of Independent Prosecutions within the State Attorney General's office, authorized to file charges in police use of force related cases. House Bill 1648 to combat ticket scalping and give concert and sports fans a chance to buy tickets without competing with an army of computer automated bots. House Bill 1915 also advanced. It would make financial education a required component of K-12 public education. Another bill that advanced, Senate Bill 5841, would allow courts to require people convicted of drunk driving to pay child support if their actions lead to the disability or death of a parent. The list of bills that look dead for the year grows longer by the week. A House bill to ban gas-powered leaf blowers and other small outdoor engines, with exceptions for chainsaws, is most likely dead. House and Senate companion bills to expand redeemable cash options for gift cards and also to let the state claim unspent balances all appear dead for the year. A Senate bill to require gun owners to purchase firearm liability insurance also appears to be stalled. Now, it's important to note that although bills that stalled in committee are likely dead, any bill with enough support from enough members can be revived later on before the legislature adjourns for the year. Watch The Impact anytime at tvw.org and follow us on X at The Impact TVW. That's a wrap for this week. Join us next time for more in-depth interviews you won't find anywhere else. I'm Mike McClanahan. Thanks for watching and have a great week.